Good morning. Good morning. My name is Trini Moore. I'm a park ranger with the Selma to Montgomery National Historic Trail, also the National Park Service and the Department of Interior. This morning we're here located live here in Selma, Alabama at the Selma Interpretive Center. We are one of two interpretive centers on the Selma to Montgomery National Historic Trail. The trail covers 54 miles all the way from the great city of Selma all the way to Montgomery, Alabama. Typically when you visit our center here in Selma, when you walk into the door, the first thing that draws your attention is this gentleman here to my right. And he draws the attention of everybody because everyone is curious as to who this gentleman might be. Some people say he's President Lyndon B. Johnson. Some people saying he's President Bill Clinton. Some people saying he's an Army general. But those who know us here in Selma, they know that we talk about this gentleman who's a symbolic representation of what a voting registrar might look like here in Selma during the times of the movement here in Selma.
You have a question.
Okay.
Your question is from Chad Hoeing. What is in the jar?
The jar is jelly beans. You can't eat them. Most people want to come in here, especially the kids. They ask us, "Can I eat those jelly beans?" No. Teresa put those jelly beans in the jar, park ranger here a long time ago. But that was an option that the symbolic representation of the voter registrar had for people who were trying to register to vote. So the jelly beans were just something that he was being sarcastic with. So no matter how many jelly beans that you tell him that's in the jar, you're going to be wrong. So the idea was to discourage you and make you give up on trying to register to vote. So also with those jelly beans, he also had another option at his disposal. He had a bar of soap. He would ask you, well, how many bubbles are in this bar of soap? He had that at his disposal as well. Or he would ask you how many gallons of water in the Alabama River. He also had another option at his disposal. It's whatever mood that he was in that particular day as to how he would present the questioning or present the test, or he would present whatever he felt like doing that particular day. So he would have a 68 question literacy test. But in order to take this test, you had to have someone white or somebody Caucasian to ask you to come in and vouch for you in order for you to take this test. Even though you had to take the 68 question literacy test, whites were only given question 33. And question 33 says, in case the president is unable to perform the duties of his office, who assumes them?
I have another question by Chad. The question is, did white people have to answer the same kinds of questions?
No, whites were only given, if he felt like it, whites were only given one question, question 33. But blacks had to answer all 68 questions, and they were timed, which means you can only miss so many during that time limit. And also here in Selma, typically whites represented 15% of the population. Blacks represented 85% of the population, but only about 15% were registered voters. So here we have here symbolic of what you see registration forms. Since Alabama is a red state, we would say that this represents the disparity of whites who were registered voters and these who were not. We would say these here is that other percentage of blacks, Latinos, and everyone else, which is the blue state, because you see a blue light, and that symbolizes disparity there. So we had a big disparity here in Dallas County, especially Selma. But this gentleman had a military-style haircut. He wore a white business suit, and we could possibly say he was an ex-military, or we could say he was a businessman, but all in all, it symbolized white power here in Dallas County. Dallas County had another problem here too. They had a mean sheriff too, to compound with this gentleman who was making it hard for blacks to register to vote here in Dallas County. So we know today that voting is the most powerful instrument for breaking down injustice. And what we're seeing here today is the same thing here that we're facing right now in the United States of America. So with that being said, we're going to proceed back here today, and we're going to talk about how do we get here? How do we get here to this bridge? There was a murder of a young black man named Jimmy Lee Jackson down in Marion, who was a 26-year-old Army veteran. He was a deacon of his church, and he was murdered down in Marion one particular night down in Marion during a peaceful protest as they were trying to protest or a peaceful march against the lynching of SCLC worker Reverend James Orange. So Jimmy Lee Jackson was murdered on that particular night down in Marion. He protected his grandfather and his mother, and he was murdered by an Alabama state trooper who was later convicted years later after 1965. But this set the spark plug for the entire movement. And it was determined that we need to do something. So the idea was to take the body of Jim Lee Jackson and dump it on the Capitol steps in Montgomery. Obviously, we can't do that. So you had a gentleman named Reverend James Bevel said he was going to walk all the way to Montgomery to see Wallace, and nobody wasn't going to stop him. So with all the tension growing here in Selma, something had to happen. So we come here to this particular exhibit, which is an exhibit of Bloody Sunday. It's across the bridge at the Edmund Pettus Bridge here in Selma, and it's over the bridge. It's called Selma. Obviously, during that particular time, you had two gentlemen who were Hosea Williams and you had John Lewis, who determined they was going to do something without permission, because in order for you to be able to march, you had to have an injunction. You just couldn't do it illegally. So the state troopers gave them, Major John McLeod gave them 2 minutes to disperse. Obviously, it wasn't 2 minutes, and they rushed them all the way back to their churches. And it didn't just go on for one particular moment. It went on all throughout tonight. And this is why we're here today. This symbolizes Bloody Sunday. And that sparked Dr. King to come to Selma even more, seeing what atrocities that took place on Bloody Sunday.